This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association. Your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Thursday, June 5th, 2025, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will be joined by Kaden Sweeney of agmarket.net for our closing market coverage. But first, I'm joined by Jose De Jesus with the National Pork Board as we discuss the new rollout of the Taste What Pork Can Do consumer campaign. Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm joined today by Jose De Jesus with the National Pork Board. Jose, thanks for taking the time to join me here today. And we're talking about Taste What Pork Can Do, the new campaign that has been rolled out by National Pork Board. And, whenever I think about a campaign, I think about, one of the big ones, and that was, of course, Pork the Other White Meat. But that was a much different style of campaign because that's in the past, Jose. So how is this campaign vastly different?
Yeah, it's very different. There's a couple things. Number one, it's a digital play. So we're trying to focus in the digital space, and that's by design because our target audience is younger consumers. So think about the Gen Zs and the millennials, right? And so they don't spend a lot of time in traditional media. It's all digital. So we're focused in the digital space. The other part of it is we're also focused on high consumption states where people live, high population states. Think about, markets like Texas, California, New York, etc. And there's also low pig production as well. So it's a little bit different. And then the other part that I believe that's very different, that's something we haven't done in the past, is that we really have a whole health strategy. And this is really about using process to sell more pork and expand the category on the fresh side. So really focus on those cuts that are very familiar to consumers. So think about bacon, ham, sausage, and then how do we connect the dots so that we're expanding the category and driving category growth on the fresh side of the business.
So going back to kind of where we started, with campaigns in the past, you would see it in the newspaper or magazine, you'd see it on a billboard. Might not be the case with this campaign because it is so digitally focused and it is targeted towards specific groups of consumers, correct?
Yes, it is. I mean, we know from the data that we have that boomers eat a lot of pork, but we know that there's an opportunity, huge opportunity actually with younger consumers to make pork relevant to them. So this is about how do we cater our messaging and to that younger consumer that has an opportunity to really drive consumption long-term for the industry. So, to do that, you got to focus on the digital side because that's where they're spending a lot of the time surfing the internet, right? So think about, social media platforms, think about, some other platforms online where we're driving consumers to retail so they can purchase pork. So it's different. It's not your typical, print advertising, your typical, ad on the, or commercial on TV, right? It's just really understanding where our target audience is, for lack of a better way of saying it, hanging out, if you will, online, and then driving that messaging to them so we can convert them into purchases.
So for, you think about a state like Iowa, obviously we have a ton of pork producers here and we are just immersed in the industry. We see about it all the time. We hear about it all the time. But like you said, this campaign might be, targeting folks that are in areas where there's not a lot of pigs, but there are a lot of pork consumers. So from the producer standpoint, then they might not see necessarily everything that's going on behind the scenes of this campaign, but it is out there and it is happening because it's being targeted to the specific consumers.
Absolutely. I mean, we like to talk about we're fishing where the fish are. And, yes, some producer might not be able to see this just because the campaign is not necessarily targeting the producer per se, but, we're working with our state organizations very closely. They're also promoting the campaign as well. And so they're going to see some things in their states. We also have a lot of information on our website. So I encourage everybody to go to porkcheckoff.org/email and you'll get all the details for the campaign as we deploy it or continue to deploy it for the next number of years.
And that rollout has been happening now for about a month. What have those early returns been like? Have you been pleased with the results so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's early. We rolled it out May 6th, so we still, waiting for things to come up. But, early indication as we're receiving great feedback from consumers. We're showing up differently. Pork is showing up differently. I think this idea of having an ownable position around taste and flavor is resonating very well. So we're really excited about that, and I hope our producers are as well.
Jose, is there anything else you'd like to let our viewers, our listeners here in the state of Iowa know about when it comes to the new campaign, or just what you're excited about with it?
Yeah, just excited about, this industry needed this type of effort, right? And so we're excited about this. This is a huge effort, that we probably haven't seen in the past from the standpoint of all the data that we have, that we use that to take into action in the marketplace. So really excited. I think our producers here at Expo will see how we're showing up differently on their behalf, and we're really grateful for their support.
Jose De Jesus with the National Pork Board here at World Pork Expo 2025. Jose, thanks so much for the time. It's been an interesting conversation, and best of luck with the rest of the rollout of the campaign.
Thank you.
Thank you to Jose De Jesus for joining today's show and providing that update on the campaign from the National Pork Board of Taste What Pork Can Do. It is time now for our closing market coverage. I will be joined by Kaden Sweeney of agmarket.net next. But first, a word from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. You're watching Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It is time now for the closing markets on Ag Matters PM, and I'm joined now by Kaden Sweeney of agmarket.net. Kaden, good to see you. Good to talk with you. What's happening with the trade in the grains? What did we see here today?
Yeah, finally continuing to get, seemed like a bit of some upside momentum. Certainly after last week and the week before, we'll take it for sure. The last 3 days, we've had green closes in December corn, November beans up today, July wheat up today as well. So all across the board there on the grains. New crop side, we're pushing higher. We certainly would love to see some more of that as we enter what's normally a pretty hot time for some new crop marketing sales.
And then, Kaden, as it stands right now with the trade discussions, of course, we're all watching to see what happens with China. It does sound like President Trump at least had a discussion with President Xi Jinping of China, and they at least made some overtures that at least the talks went well in that face-to-face, or not face-to-face, but that voice-to-voice discussion.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, at this point, any positive tariff news is certainly a good thing. I do think market maybe has grown a bit callous to tariff news, if you will. Just seems like it's not getting ripped one way or another based on headlines, which is kind of nice from our perspective. It's just so hard whenever a certain day corn will be up 3 and go to -7 on the blink of an eye just because of a tariff headline. So it seems like we're past that point a little bit, which is nice. Certainly think, we want to see the tariff stuff get ironed out as we go forward. Would love to see China step back in and start buying corn again. Remains to be seen, but at this point, we'll take positive news all we can get for sure.
On the livestock side of the markets, at least at midday today, the cattle had taken off like a rocket ship once again. Is that how we closed today?
Yeah, cattle ripping higher. I think, to be honest, that's probably the most tariff-sensitive headline, at least right now. It feels that way with where we close here. June live cattle up 450 and feeders up over $5. So certainly ripping higher. Hogs did not quite have that day where they're down here about 22 cents or so. So pretty quiet day on the hog side, but cattle ripping higher to contract highs once again. It's just a freight train that won't stop.
And when you talk about the hog side, of course, we are here at World Pork Expo this week, and kind of the general sentiment around World Pork Expo has been that things kind of steady right now and on decent footing for the hogs. And I think people just have a pretty generally positive outlook about the hogs going forward right now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a good place to be steady here is above $100, at 105 or so 100. So certainly we'll take that. Chart's kind of been saying the same way. We're above all of our major averages. I always say, livestock, it's certainly a fair amount of fundamental news, but when it all kind of boils down, I think that, cattle and hogs both tend to trade pretty technically. And so being above all those moving averages is certainly a good thing, kind of gives us some room to the upside to continue.
And then, Kaden, just to wrap up here today, we know that you farm in Illinois, and we haven't had a chance to talk to you since the end of planting season. How are things going on your farm right now?
Yeah, certainly. A month ago, I would have answered this pretty differently. We had a little short stretch in the middle of April, and then everything sat for a month as we were plenty wet. Nothing too overly flooding, if you will, but just kept getting nailed by half-inch rains. got everything in about 2 weeks ago, and it looks pretty good for the most part. So certainly can't call it perfect, but for all intents and purposes, crop looks pretty good. Just maybe a bit delayed from where it normally would be. But as we all know, it's going to amount to how much rainfall we get July and August.
He is Kaden Sweeney of agmarket.net. Check out agmarket.net for all kinds of resources and information and to get in touch with the team. Kaden, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it as always, and have a great rest of your week.
Same to you, man. Appreciate you. Have a good time.
Thank you to Kaden Sweeney of agmarket.net for our closing market coverage. Let's take a look at the closing numbers, how we finished in the markets today, and you can find that information under the markets tab of our website anytime at iowaagnet.com. July corn closes up 3/4 cent at 438.5. July soybeans up 6 3/4 at 1051 3/4. July soybean meal unchanged at 297.10. July soybean oil down 16 cents at 46.65. Chicago wheat up 2 1/4 at 545.5. Minneapolis wheat up 1 3/4 at 625 1/4. Kansas City hard red wheat up 2 pennies at 542 1/2. July oats down 9 1/2 at 378 1/4. On the Merc, June live cattle up 450 at 222.90. August feeder cattle closes up 528 at 309.15. June lean hogs up 88 cents at $100.85. June pork cutout unchanged at $107.98. Class 3 milk up 4 cents at $18.75. That's going to do it for our closing markets today, and that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can follow us on social media at Facebook, X, TikTok, and LinkedIn. And you can listen to our morning, midday, and closing market podcast, as well as our daily episodes of our Iowa Ag Matters podcast, wherever you find your favorite podcast, at Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the World Pork Expo in Des Moines, for Dustin Huffman, Riley Smith, and Andy Peterson, I'm Mark Magnuson. Thanks for watching Ag Matters PM.